Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Michael, and today I'm going to be taking you through a full breakdown of how I created my Enver Gortash cosplay from Baldur's Gate 3. This is probably going to be one of our longer videos just because there is so much to talk about. If you're not familiar with who Enver Gortash is, he is one of the main three villains from the game Baldur's Gate 3 that came out from Larian Studios last year. There's kind of three main big villains. There's Ketheric Thorm, there's Orin the Red, and there is Enver Gortash. And they are the chosen of the kind of the main three gods of death and murder and tyranny. And Enver is the chosen of the god of tyranny, and so he's a tyrant. And so his whole plot is he, through political maneuvers, he basically becomes the leader of the city of Baldur's Gate and uses Orin and Ketheric to kind of orchestrate all this stuff, and that's the main plot of the game. So the reason that I wanted to cosplay him, there's tons of outfits from Baldur's Gate 3 that I want to cosplay one day, so you'll see those someday. But as soon as Enver popped up as one of the villains of the game, I was like, that's the one I want to make. And I don't know if that was maybe a mistake because this was a huge undertaking, but it was just really exciting for me to see that. I'm just now getting into 3D printing. I got a resin printer back in January, and so seeing all these like little details on here, seeing that it was mostly sewing based outfit, still like the coat and the shirt and everything. This isn't armor. This isn't like Orin's crazy like crab outfit or Ketheric's big armor piece, but it does have some stuff, which we'll talk about. But it just got me really excited. And then when I found out that my friend Steph at Nerds Gone Mild and her partner Miles was going to do Ketheric, and then our friend C was doing Orin, I was like, oh my gosh, it would be so cool if the three of us could be like the three main villains, and everybody got really excited. So that's what motivated me to finish this crazy build, and Haley and I worked really hard on it. So I'm excited to take you through the process. So a little bit of explanation about this video. I started out building this in July, late July, before Haley and I took a trip to the UK to celebrate our friend Hannah's wedding, which we vlogged that, so all of that is coming to the channel. That's when I started, and I started with the best intentions. I was like, I'm gonna take everybody step by step through, and I got through the shirt, and I got through the pants, and then Con Crunch set in, and I was stressing, and I was working on this constantly, and so I didn't do a very good job of showing how I made the coat or the belt. Those parts are kind of missing from the process. So for those, I'll mostly be talking about it, but you will be able to see how I made the shirt and the pants at least, and then I'll come back in whenever the footage is missing and talk to you about how I did stuff. So with that, let's dive into the video. Getting started with Gortash, and these are my main fabrics. I've got this synthetic linen curtains, two of these that I got at Goodwill. The reason I believe they are synthetic, there's no tag or anything, but I did a burn test on the corner of it, carefully taking a match, and the fibers got all crinkly and smoky because they're probably made of polyester or nylon or something, I don't know. But anyway, so I'm going to be dyeing these black and red with some synthetic dye. And then I have this faux leather that I got at Joann's. It's nice and smooth and thin, which was very important. And it has a black backing because I really don't want to line, at least at this point, I don't want to line a bunch of the coat. That would be annoying to have to make the whole coat twice, so, and it'd make it a lot more hot. So I would like to just have one layer where I can manage it. Those are my main fabrics. So I used the graphite synthetic fiber dye from RIT. It's graphite. This is the darkest synthetic color that they have, but it came out really, really gray. It was like dark gray. It was not black. So then Haley went to Michael's and got this back to black dye kit, and it was literally this picture. It was like, it was that gray, and now it's black. It's really black. So this works. Thank you, Haley, for saving the day. Very happy with how this has come out so far. Time to start cutting the pattern. We have the pants pattern here to begin with because it's the biggest piece that's going to be using the black linen fabric. This pattern is from 3D Lizen. I have all of her stuff over here, printed and taped together. Got the pants pieces, and then I have the shirt pieces, and then a couple extras because I want to use like the designs on here for the sleeves and just get an idea of how things are going to fit together. But I'm gonna be cutting out, and no, I'm not gonna do a time lapse because that takes up a lot of energy and makes me feel a lot of pressure to cut correctly. So I'll just show you when I'm done. One thing I will say though is that 3D Lizen's patterns don't include seam allowance, so that you can create whatever kind of seam allowance you want. So I'm going to be using this chalk marker thing to trace out the pattern on here and then add probably a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around it. I'm going to be serging all of these pieces because I don't want this frayed edge to be messing with me. So actual sewing lines are traced and then seam allowance is added. Woohoo, all the black fabric is cut out, pants and shirt ready to go. And because this is a weave fabric, I've decided that I'm gonna do a thin lining layer underneath. I think that'll be more comfortable on my skin. And then it's also gonna add stability so that this weave doesn't shift out of place while I'm working on it. I've pinned the lining to the shell fabric, and I'm going to do a base stitch all around my chalk line and then serge the edges so that I don't deal with these fraying edges as I'm working with the fabric. For basting stitches, I changed my machine to its widest stitch so we have nice big stitch lines and just sew around the edges. So with the traditional professional foot on my machine, I was getting a lot of push from the fabric. It was kind of moving everything downward and shifting and driving me crazy. But then I changed to my walking foot. And so the walking foot applies pressure from the top as well as the teeth that are underneath there so that you get less shifting. And so it is working so much better, getting very little shift because we're getting equal pressure applied from the top and the bottom. And when it comes to serging the edges, I'm actually going to flip it around to the lining side because the shell fabric has shifted a little bit with the weave of the fabric, but the lining is going to be really solid. So I'm going to trim and serge around these edges, trimming away the kind of frayed pieces to get it nice and neat. My plan for the flames is going to be I've printed out just the flame part of the pattern here. And I'm gonna hold it up to my red fabric and then cut out this piece and then lay this piece on top of this piece and then stitch. I might not be this exact because this is a whole lot of lines and this looks really crazy, but use this as a guide to do an applique of red over the black. And to add stability to the flame portion, I have some black fusible interfacing with these tiny glue dots on one side. And I'll use my iron, hold it down for a few seconds, and go all over this black material to melt the glue dots and fuse this interfacing so that it'll be nice and stable and usable for the applique. While I'm waiting for some piping trim to arrive on this, because order of operations means I need to wait on the trim before I can do any of the rest, I'm going to take some steps to working on the trousers. I'm thinking for the trousers, I'm going to do the same thing I did before, is do a lining for various parts, like especially the codpiece and then around the legs, because this fabric is just like It looks really cool from the outside and it's exactly what I wanted, but it is so shifty and stretchy and all over the place. I don't want that to happen. So adding a lining will have add lots of stability to that and help things not shift around. So I'm gonna do the same thing I did on all of these panels, which was to line it and then baste around the edges and then serge around the edges. So doing the same thing again over here. And like with most sewing, it's pretty much just ironing most of the time. I feel like I spend more time over here than I do at the sewing machine. Using every pin on my magnet for these giant trouser panels. All right, transferring the pattern for the leather pieces that are up and down onto the back of the fabric. I think my plan is to do a basting stitch down the center of each of these lines so that when I flip it over, there'll be a nice guideline for me to put those leather straps down the front. In order to cut out these strips that are on the trousers, breaking out my faux leather. And because I can't really pin to faux leather without leaving little holes, I am using tape to just tape down the pattern so that I can cut it out without it shifting around. Oh, I had to think about this one for a second. So I can't pin the strips onto the fabric because I'll put holes in everything. But I figured out if I pin under there and under there, I can keep everything in place for sewing. And now I have to very carefully stitch right along the edge so that we don't have any weird seam allowance things happening, and I can keep that raw edge nice and tight to the side of the strip. Busted out my quilting table so that I can keep this as flat as possible. Now I usually use the guide of the side of the sewing foot when I'm sewing other things, and I'm doing that here too. So going nice and slow, keeping the edge of the faux leather right on the edge of the sewing foot and going nice and slow. I'm getting a nice edge all along these pieces that I am very happy with. And don't yell at me for sewing over my pins. I kind of have to right now. I'm being careful. And through this method, look how close I am to my guidelines. Ooh, not there. Ooh, don't look at that. But here, I did a really good job here. And okay, redemption, I did a really good job here. But you know, no one's gonna know that once all of this is all together. But this is working really well. So I'm gonna keep going and do 3 more of these. So that's one side done. Lines followed. And now I have to repeat it for the other side. So me popping in again. At this point in the construction process, you know, we did the dye and then we did the second dye and we were dyeing it and trying to make it black. But it just, like, compared to the black of the coat and the black of everything else, it looked gray. It just looked gray. You can probably see it in the video. Like when it was wet, it looked black, but once it dried out, it was just dark gray, and it really needed to be black. And so Haley went to one of many trips to Michael's to get black spray fabric paint, and so that's how we actually achieved a true black as well as the red for the flames. So you'll see that here. We've got the rivets of the pants curing from the 3D printer. This is 46. I think I need about 10 more, which I'm printing on my Elegoo Satun 2, which is working very well. I'll tag the maker of the files in the description so you can go find them. This is kind of one of those, why is this detail on the cosplay? Why are these little tiny gold buttons all over the pants? But the details are there, so I have to do them. That's now that we have the pants all the right color, it's time to take off the painter's tape, revealing the leather strips underneath, all nice and clean and still shiny with no paint on them. And I love this trick. So for painting these little tiny things, if you try to use spray paint, they're gonna blow all over the place. So use painter's tape and roll the ends underneath and put the sticky side up so that I can paint these little things and they're not gonna go anywhere. I've been hard at work printing away all of these STL files, and I'm going to be covering them with some Plasti Dip to prime them. There's very little like processing I've even had to do, like it comes out so smooth, but Plasti Dip could help maybe to seal in any visible lines. Like you can't even see anything, it's so smooth. But you know, any lines that might be here or there, this will help to kind of fill those in a little bit without losing the important details. While we're working on getting the paint figured out for all those little coins, I've gone ahead and copied all of the points onto the trousers for where I'll be gluing them on. So I think I can start assembling the trousers. To glue on the little coins to the trousers, I'm using my favorite super glue, which is the Super Glue Gel Control. It's got this cool little squeezy thing and it dries in about 20 seconds and it holds really well. I really like using it. So just smearing a little bit on the back and then attaching it to where I place my dots according to the pattern. And this pattern does not include space for pockets, but knowing myself at conventions, I'm gonna want pockets. So it's gonna be, it might be like a kind of a pinching at the top or the bottom, but I'm gonna try to just have a really narrow seam allowance here and then include some pockets on the side of the trousers, so that I can hold my phone and my wallet and stuff. I've added some fusible interfacing to the seam allowance of the pocket, as well as some fusible interfacing for the space I'm going to slash for the pocket. And so kind of lining it up and having some seam allowance at the top and the bottom, I'm going to create a slash through here and then sew the pocket to the pants with a really narrow seam allowance to avoid puckering at the top and the bottom. I think it's unavoidable, but I'd like to minimize it. To add the pockets to the trousers, I've interfaced a little piece here and with enough room so that my pocket can be at the top or the bottom. I'm going to do a slash here. Then flipping to the other side, I'm going to reinforce the sides here. Since these are two layers, I want them to stay together. So I'm going to do a basting stitch kind of close to the edge on both sides of the pocket hole. Lining up the pocket to the hole. I'm giving myself very narrow seam allowance on the pocket, but regular seam allowance on the inside of the pocket. And then I'm going to stitch this and then turn it all inside out on both sides. And I'm being sure to end my stitches right with the separation, because otherwise if I sew past that, when I turn it all inside out, there's going to be a great big pinch. So trying to avoid that and just stay very close to the edge of the opening. Turn the lining of the pocket, see, there we go, no pinching, to like the inside. So this is the right side of the pants, this is the inside of the pocket, so I've turned it all inside, and now I'm going to do a top stitch, kind of like a stay stitch along this, so that it'll sew onto the narrow seam allowance that's under here and stay nice and secure. Stitching all the way around the outside of the pocket. And then cleaning up all the raw edges on the serger. And after adding some stitches to the top and the bottom to keep it kind of closed, we have a nice little pocket. If I were to do all this again, I would probably have accounted for this in the pattern, have split this pattern in half so that there would be a side seam, and then we could probably avoid this pinching issue. But this is all going to be covered up under the coat anyway, so who cares? I would much rather have a pocket, even if it's a little less perfect, than have no pocket at all. To add the shin part of the trousers onto the bottom, we have to gather lots of this so that it fits onto this. We have to remove about 1/3 of the length, maybe even a half. So I'm going to do a gather stitch, so a very wide base stitch right along the bottom here so that I can slowly gather it all together, pulling on one thread and scooting the bulk down until it lines up here. And once we're gathered, we use lots of pins to hold everything in place. I'm trying to keep the leather parts flat. I learned that on the first leg. If they get crinkled down at the bottom, they don't really look that good. And so again, I'm gonna do the widest stitch on my machine so that if anything looks weird in all of these gathers, I can just kind of pick it out and readjust and redo it. And turning it inside out, it looks pretty nice. The leather parts are nice and smooth, or nice and gathered. A lot of the bulk kind of towards the back here. But yeah, very happy with how this came out. 3D Lizen, who made this pattern, left a lot of space to create a tunnel for some elastic, so that it'll be nice and tight along the bottom of the knee. I've like pinned this and tried it on, and I don't think I need that, so I'm actually going to serge all of this off. I'm just going to chop all of it off so that it gets rid of all this bulk and skip the elastic, and then sew the pant leg together. And with all of that serged, I'm going to hand stitch the seam allowance downward here so that it will look nice on the other side. And then with the seam, I hand stitched down the seam allowance using a catch stitch so it's nice and flat. And now to sew the inseam of both pant legs. And serging off the additional seam allowance. Turning one leg right side out, one leg wrong side out, and placing them in so we can have the right sides together to do the crotch seam. And I'm going to leave a little bit open. I haven't decided if I'm doing a fly or buttons yet. We'll see, but let's do this first. As far as working with the pattern, so I took the waist in significantly, like what is that, like 4 inches. And then I guess that's what my butt looks like because my ground's out. Maybe not, but it's like the poofiness needs to be there. But as far as like actually getting to my waist, since these are high-waisted trousers, this seems to be looking good. I haven't exactly seen it from behind. I might have to get a Haley's opinion, but that looks pretty funny, doesn't it? Tonight we're back to working on the shirt, giving the trousers a break back from England, and ready to get to work for Dragon Con. Here we go. Okay, so we have this lovely trim, this like coppery trim from, where is it from?
Walmart.com.
Oh yeah, it's from Walmart.com. It took forever. It's probably not really from Walmart, but whatever. Walmart's up to some shady stuff. I don't know what they're doing. So piping is fun. I love doing piping. So what I'm going to do is I've got my seam allowance marked on the inside here with this pink chalk. And so I'm going to line up the very edge of the piping with that seam allowance line on the inside using my pins to mark myself. And then I'm going to do the opposite side of the seam allowance on this trim on the front so that when I stitch over that, hopefully, I should be able to fold this over nice and neat and clean. And then I'll be able to fold under this seam allowance nice and neat and clean. And then fold this under and top stitch over that nice and neat and clean so that it'll give this effect all the way down. Let's see if I can make that happen. So as I'm pinning the trim, I'm thinking about order of operations and how I want to assemble everything as I'm going. And so I'm realizing that I probably need to sew the shoulder seams together so that I have a solid neckline so that I can have a continuous line of piping all the way around and down the front. Like right at the collarbone, there's kind of like there's a black tube, I guess, that's holding on the chain that's around his neck. And so I'm realizing I want that to be the same thickness all the way around, and it goes over the piping. And so I need to have piping going along the back of the neckline as well. So I'm going to do that before continuing on the piping. And as always, when I'm doing piping, I use my piping foot. It has these great ridges that keep the piping on one side, so the needle is nice and tight to the side of the piping, especially with this white. I do not want that visible. And so the needle is nice and tight on the side of that piping. So we're going to be looking really good. Progress for tonight. Everything is pinned. So pinned on the inside. I'm going to be hand stitching this all down with catch stitches. I think I'm going to reduce the seam allowance a little bit here. I think it got a little big towards the bottom, and I don't want this rough stuff rubbing on my skin, but it's pretty thin. I think I want about this thickness up top, so I'm gonna just serge that a little tighter. This is all looking great, stitched and then folded over. There's a little bit of white peeking out here, which I don't want to be visible, so I might take like some fabric paint or just even a Sharpie and just really carefully go over that white from the piping. Couldn't find anything with a black tape, so work with what we've got. And I'm gonna be top stitching down here because there is a visible top stitch on the tunic, the kind of the facing or whatever we want to call this, and then it goes all the way around along the back. This fabric is great. It's really the bias is really working well, so I can get these nice curves, got nice seam line up, so I'm very happy with how this is coming together. I've switched to the professional foot so I can have a nice skinny foot for the sewing. Going to line up the edge right underneath the foot and do a nice top stitch all the way around the edge of this trim. Hooray! That came out beautifully. Nice and clean all the way down. Ooh, now I gotta think about these flames. Ooh, that's gonna be a lot of work too. Haley had the idea to do the flames as appliques, and so 3D Lizen's pattern comes with a flame design. You can really only see this much on one side and like this much on the other side. I think I'm gonna try to make a stencil like out of tissue paper, trace over the design, and make it like usable. Like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to capture like these tiny details. Let's just see what I'm able to do, but hopefully the flames will look something like that, all nice and lined up once I'm done. Okay, so here is my pattern. So most of this, especially on this side, is copied off of 3D Lizen's pattern, especially for the visible part. Like really this is the only part that's really going to be visible. The rest I just kind of fiddled around with to make it look flamey. This part was not included in Lizen's pattern, so I eyeballed this part. Hopefully it'll still look like flame. The black is like cut out parts, so I wanted to make sure that I left that, like I'm going to cut out all of that and have it be black. But this section was all eyeballed from the reference image from the game, and then this part I just kind of copied from this side. Again, like a non-visible part is all going to be over here. So I'm really hoping that this is going to work, because I want to be able to lay this on the red and then bend it to the black, and I want to carefully quilt over these lines, and maybe they won't tear and obliterate, and I'll be able to still get a lot of the detail. I hope this wasn't a lot of wasted effort. Okay, let's see what happens. I'm really not that familiar with quilting. I'm trying for the free motion, so that is foot PDH. Changing, stitch, straight, stitch, zigzag. I just want straight so I can kind of do whatever. So changed to the foot that it's saying, and I'm gonna do some tests to try to practice before doing the real thing. Oh my gosh, it's actually working. All of these are stitch lines. All of this has been stitched. You can see it on the underside. This is working. Oh, I think it's working. And then we should just be able to tear off the tissue paper and have the flame outline remain with the thread. It worked. It worked. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. Okay, so now I need to cut out along all of these lines and have the flames be exposed. All right, so this side worked really well. I did the tissue paper pattern and then did the quilting lines, like the freestyle quilting lines around the design, and then cut out the design before adding the satin zigzag stitches. On this side, I just went for it and went for the zigzag stitches, and we can see that it's making cutting things out a lot harder. And so this side doesn't look as clean. And so I'm probably gonna need to like go over this side again, unfortunately, to clean up these lines. But I'm hoping that I move into the zigzag stitch and cover up the edges on all of these pieces, and they'll be nice and clean and appliqued. So for my machine, I'm going to here, then here, free motion, and zigzag this one. The proper foot is on, and I'm turning the stitch length the stitch width way down to, on the other side I did 1.4. Then I'm doing these really close zigzag stitches right next to the edge, and because it's freehand, I'm moving the work as I go under the needle, nice and slow, so the zigzags stay nice and tight. I said that I was gonna have to maybe re-embroider or zigzag or satin stitch all those. I use these scissors from Famore Cutlery. They're these little, and they're sold in these little kits. They're wonderful. Use these a lot, so I have that. These scissors were amazing because they've got one side that's sharp and one side that kind of scoops up the fuzz that was on the edge. And I've already done it, but it made huge improvements to the lines along the flames. And I think I can still, like, if there are any little spots here or there, like as I wear it, I think I can still easily use these scissors to just clean it up, rather than having to go back and like re-satin stitch all of these places. I've just abandoned like these spots. It's just like, who cares? It's not gonna be visible anyway. I'm not gonna kill myself cutting out these. I didn't really plan ahead, like, oh yeah, I have to cut that. On this side, like these little spots, I was able to get those out. But I'm very happy with how this came together. I think I'm ready to sew the sides on. And then I think the next thing is gonna be the grommets down the front. Yeah, it's coming together. Yee, I'm so happy. This looks so good. So clean. Yes, it looks excellent. I'm so happy with this. Okay, so as promised, this is the point where the phone went away and just the work got really fast. So I'll mostly be talking you through the rest of this, so I apologize for telling rather than showing, but that is just what happens when Dragon Con is imminent and we have a lot to work on. So finishing up the process for the shirt, it was mostly just the grommets. So these are 1/4 inch grommets that are all the way up here. I think there's 13 of them. And use my grommet press to get those in nice and neat, so those all look great. And then there was the crazy lacing that goes up the front, which a lot of people have commented on, like, why is it like that? And like, literally, that's how it is in the game. I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and that's how it is. Like, these bottom ones are missing, that one's missing, that one's missing. It's all crisscross and nonsense, but that's how it looks, so that's how I did it. And then the rest of the cording is all kind of like tucked up in here. That's probably down to about here, that the rest of the cording is, because I have to loosen it up to be able to get it on over my shoulders. So I just kind of tighten it all up and then tuck those away. We can see here that the chains were added, and so these are actually lamp chains, which is really what they look like in the game. They look like little tiny circular chain that look like just lamp pole chains. And so Haley, I think, went on Amazon and got those. They were much cheaper to buy them in like the home improvement, home goods section of Amazon rather than the arts and crafts section of Amazon. These were like $17 or something for like 6 meters or something crazy that we didn't need. But then just a long lamp chain was something like $4. So it was much cheaper to do it that way. And then Haley glued on little beads to the end of each of these chains. And then I did the black binding all the way around the back of the neckline, which you can't really see, but again, it's a detail in the game, so it had to be added. And I just sewed that around the edge and then folded it up under and around and then hand stitch it from the inside on the inside of the shirt. There are actually sleeves on this shirt. I needed something for the arm armor to be able to go onto, and so this is like a gold spandex swimsuit material. So that's what I did with the sleeves, and those are underneath the arm armor. Just wanted something gold, so that kind of it would look kind of seamless. The way I'm doing these, and I'll talk about it, it's like impossible for it to be seamless, but maybe one day I'll figure out a better method of doing it. But there are sleeves on the underside of this. And we can insert a video here of me taking off the arm armor and shaking out my arms, and you could see the gold underneath. It was really, really uncomfortable for the arm armor. Ow! Ow! And I think the only other detail on the trousers that I didn't record was going to be the codpiece. And so not a traditional, like if you're thinking like Henry VIII codpiece, that's not what it is. It's just kind of a piece that covers up the front of the trousers. And so the pattern is very flat. 3D Listen's pattern is very flat, but when we look in the game, we saw that there were like ripples and creases and kind of more texture there. And so I added a layer on top of the codpiece that had some ripples. You can see them here at the top, some creases, and just hand stitched that onto the flap that I did. It's held on by snaps. So there's a snap here, a snap here, and a snap here that holds the flap down, and then I open up the flap, and then there is a fly up the middle. So that's how I figured out how to get the trousers on and off. And then I added a waistband all the way around in just some black fabric because it's not visible, but that was included in the pattern, the waistband. And so made the waistband. I did not end up doing that really weird butt shape. I just kind of kept sewing in and in and in, making it tighter. I'm not sure if maybe the pattern was meant to gather all at the waist, or maybe I just picked out the wrong size, but it was way too big for my waist. So that's not a comment on her pattern. That was user error for me. So that was pretty much it, yeah, for the trousers. Another detail that was on the legs are these crazy kneecap things. And so again, these were included in 3D Listen's pattern. So there's one on each knee, and I think they're either supposed to be like boot toppers or just like this weird additional decoration that's on top, but they are like a separate piece that I can slide over my leg so that they are actually wearable. And so it's kind of this unusual shape. I cut it out in the leather and then did a black cotton binding all the way around with some bias tape. I put in the gold grommet there in the middle, and then around the outside I did teeny tiny kind of lamp chains that Haley had in her collection from when she was working on Alicent. So that was not something we had to buy. There are tiny jump rings around the edge, and then the demon is 3D printed on my resin printer and then super glued onto the top. And they are twins, and so there are two matching pieces. In the back I sewed in some elastic so that I could get it around my leg, around my calf, around the trousers, and it would still fit snugly on the back of my leg. And it just kind of rests on top of where the boot hits, kind of right at the bottom of the pant leg. And they just hang out all day. That's pretty much all they do. So now let's get into talking about the coat. So the coat was the crunchiest piece of this build, and it was a lot of work. So starting with the back, I cut out all the pieces on the from the pattern. So this is all 3D Listen's pattern, very helpful. On the back detail, we have these satin stitch lines down the back, and then kind of these 6 eye shapes. I did a lot of experimentation to figure out where these were going to be and how they were going to be placed. I don't know if they're really sewn details in the game texture. They kind of look like metal. So there's probably a lot of ways that you could have done this, but me being kind of sewing focused, I just thought that satin stitches would work the best. As I was making these, I started out with the widest satin stitch on my machine, and as I was sewing, I gradually turned the stitch width down. Satin stitches are just really close zigzag stitches, by the way. I turned down the width of the stitch as I was working, so as I could get a nice tapered point as I was going down, and so that worked on on all of these lines. And then the eyes, I actually ended up using, this was a recommendation from Asta Darling. This is a chalk marker, so I got this off of Amazon. So this is like just kind of a regular paint pen looking thing, but it is chalk. And so this was super helpful. They came in like a pack of 6 different colors or something, and you just shake it and you dab it and you mark it on. I don't recommend leaving this on for days. The drier it is, the harder it is to kind of wipe it off of things like pleather, at least this material. So this is really like a temporary, just a guideline for where you need to be sewing. And then I used a wet cloth and washed, just like rubbed off the marks. So French seams, flat felled seam here on the bottom of the skirt, and then French seams all the way around because I did not want to line this coat. I did not want it to be any thicker or heavier than it needed to be. And so it's all French seams around the, or flat felled seams. Yeah, flat felled seams, which are French seams kind of like on the edge of your jeans. They're French seams that are then sewn down with a top stitch along the seam allowance is sewn down and flat so that it stays, nope, you're gonna fall down, so that it's, I don't like my dress form. So that was the construction of the coat and the sleeves. Everything is pretty much to the pattern. It worked really well. I didn't really have to do very much to alter the shape of anything. The collar was then cut out. So for the collar, this was a recommendation from Casey Renee Cosplay. A village went into making this cosplay happen. So obviously the collar is very dramatic and standing up and everything. And I have, for my Doctor Strange cosplay, I used a fusible foam interfacing that was like a puffy foam interfacing so that I could have the collar stand up really dramatically and move and everything. But this, it just didn't, I didn't want the puffiness. I didn't want it to be thick. I wanted it to still be nice and thin. And so there are 5 layers that went into the collar. There's 2 fashion fabrics for the facing and then the back of the collar. I then use a very, very stiff, the stiffest interfacing I could find at Joann's. I think we bought it years ago for Haley's Mary Poppins cosplay, and we've just had it because it was like just buy a bunch of it and then use it. So very, very, very stiff fusible interfacing that I ironed on to the back of each of those coat pieces. And then there's an interlining of duck canvas. And so you usually find this kind of in the outdoors section. It's that thick canvasy stuff like on a deck chair or something that maybe you use outside. But again, it's just something I had in my fabric hoard that we've used for some past project, and cut out a layer of that. Then I took wire, just a thin craft wire, and I zigzag stitched that wire all the way around the edge of the duck canvas. Carefully. I actually never hit the wire. I did a really good job. So a zigzag stitch all the way around, going slowly and carefully so that the wire was bound all the way around the edge of the duck canvas. I did not include seam allowance on the duck canvas so that there was seam allowance on the black pieces so that I could fold and tuck under the seam allowance to the inside and then do a top stitch along the top of the entire collar so that the duck canvas didn't have any like overlap or seam allowance. Everything fit carefully around the duck canvas, which was my guide for getting the correct shape. I then had to stitch that onto the coat, which was very difficult because of the wire and having everything be so stiff. It actually made it more difficult to sew on, but eventually sewed it on. And then I did not hand stitch it on the inside. There's a top stitch here. There's a little tiny top stitch all along the top, so tucking under the seam allowance on the inside of the top of the collar, I tucked it under and then sewed on top of it all the way around so that we could achieve this nice shape. So that was garment construction. So talking about the details, actually before we sewed on the collar, Haley did a fantastic job of doing the stencil on the back. So again, look at the details. There's so many details on this stupid costume. So if we look carefully at the flat character files, which I'll link below, and were very helpful in achieving like the look of this. And if you're trying to achieve like the kind of the details on all of this, the flat character files are super helpful because it shows the details all laying out flat, and these are available online. You can also get like 3D models of a lot of the characters from Baldur's Gate, and that will really help you figure out like where the placement is on it, of everything. So that was super helpful, and that's from the character designer from the game, and that'll all be linked down below. But we can see on the collar there is this very subtle, like weird dragon texture. I think it looks like a dragon. It could be a serpent. It could just be random lines on the collar. So Haley, using a combination of Adobe Illustrator and which we got a free trial for this build, so I'm not a pro, and I don't really know how to use Adobe Illustrator, but I got a free trial, so Haley used it because she's really good with computer stuff, to isolate an image, isolate like one of the dragons on there, then use MS Paint to kind of clean it up. Then we uploaded that to our Brother Cutter, so we have a Brother scan and cut, uploaded the clean image, the clean shape to the Brother Cutter. I then replicated the pattern in a grid at an angle, and then we used the Brother Cutter to cut out a repeating stencil of that shape. I think it took like 76 minutes for it to cut out all of the designs. It took a really long time. We then laid out the top piece of the collar out flat on the table. Haley very carefully used like a combination of black and white Angela's leather paint to achieve like the right level of gray that we wanted. I carefully lined it up, making it very symmetrical, and then Haley's lightly dabbed on the design. It's very subtle. We didn't want it to be thick. We didn't want it like the paint to like a Van Gogh, like to be like sticking up or anything. It needed to be nice and flat. She did an amazing job. We did all that all the way around. That probably took like an hour or so for this crazy detail. That doesn't matter. Why is it there? But it's there. So we recreated it. Then it was time to figure out the embroidery. Once the coat was constructed and the collar was on there, we had to figure out the embroidery. I do not have like fancy embroidery software. I don't really know how to design any of that stuff. So I put out a call on Instagram to a couple of friends, and then again it was Asta Darling, love you Asta, who recommended, hey, just go on Fiverr and get somebody to make it for you. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, I've never even thought of getting somebody else to make this stuff for you. I just figure you have to do it all yourself and suffer. But no, you can just go online and get somebody really talented and skilled at it to help you. So we went on Fiverr, and well, first I went on Adobe Illustrator and isolated all of these designs from 3D Lizen's pattern. And so she had it all laid out as like a texture so that you could see the outline of all of these crazy shapes on there. I used Adobe Illustrator, and then Nerds Gone Mild gave me some tips on Adobe Illustrator of how to save that as a PNG. I deleted some like guidelines that weren't necessary, so I just had these nice clean images of all of these files. I then sent that to a really great guy on Fiverr. They charged like $5 for stuff, but because this was complicated, it actually ended up being, I think, about $40 for him to do it over 2 days. Also the trim on the bottom. So all of it together, just because it was so complicated, I think it ended up being more. He took like 2 days to get it back to me, and then they came back and they were excellent. All of these shapes were nice and clean and defined, and set up well for embroidery software. And so I was actually able to take each image, upload it to, so I have the Janome 550E Memorycraft embroidery machine. So uploaded each of those images to their software to format it on the frame. And then we created appliques for each, kind of isolating different areas. So like this was an area, that's an area, that's an area, kind of all the way around, getting it into small pieces so that we could do it in like small chunks at a time. There was no way I was going to be able to embroider it directly onto the collar. Like one mistake and all of this work is ruined too. It would have been a disaster. I don't know how to do that. So appliques made much more sense so that we could individually place the appliques and make sure that they were proportional and right and where they were supposed to be. So that took a long time. That took several days to not just embroider them, but then to cut them out because they were appliques, and so you have to hoop it, and you have to hoop it with a backing and a support and the fabric and the gold and everything. So Haley had to take a trip to Walmart to get additional thread because we were running out and there's so much of it. And so I think that was like an 11 o'clock Walmart run to do that. This is you know why we didn't record? It's because we were doing all this crazy stuff. So got each of these out, cut them out, and then I used fabric tack glue to glue down each of them in the correct position. Fabric tack was excellent. It dries really quickly and it's not messy. It leaves like a little bit of strings that are really easy to clear up. So I highly recommend fabric tack for this kind of stuff, especially like an applique to leather pleather situation. Yeah, that was one of the most challenging pieces of this whole build, was figuring out the embroidery and how to get it on there, but it's all on there. Ooh, it took a long time. Then it was time to glue on the additional details, and so there are all of the resin printed demons. These are all from Crotech. They all came out beautifully. I barely had to do anything. I didn't have to do any processing. We painted all of them, as you've seen in I think in a previous clip. We painted all of them with Plasti Dip, and then used this Folk Art Treasure Gold copper to paint everything on here. So all of the resin printed pieces, the trim along the top, even the metal, we touched up the metal with this so that it was cohesive color all the way through. All of these pieces, the belt, this chain, the buckle, the little coins, don't fall down, the little coins on the pants, the armor, all of it. And I think we used about half of this bottle. A little bit goes a long way. Really good paint, really held up well. The gauntlet, everything on the hand, everything is all painted using that paint on top of black. So that kind of gives it this antique-y look. That's weathered. There are additional details on the sleeve. And so another demon, more eyes, this little bug looking thing. And then I scaled down really, really small additional details that are here on the sleeve. There are more tiny little gold pieces that are in between the seams. And so I glued those on. I satin stitched these designs onto the sleeve on both sides. It's just a lot. Then it was time to do the applique on the trim of the coat. And so again, fired up the embroidery machine and did about 3 of these designs, isolating them at a time, moving down to do all of this all the way down. Then sewed that on to the coat so that it was like this separate piece. I didn't want to embroider anything directly onto the coat, because again, if anything messes up, it's like a disaster. So just do it as an extra detail on top. I was getting a little bit of problems with the coat laying flat, so then I made these little pockets at the bottom that are holding some washers, so they're little fabric weights down at the bottom, and so that keeps the coat lying really flat down the front. It doesn't flap open, it stays nice and secure throughout the day, and that worked really well. I think that's all the details on the coat. If I missed anything, put it in the comments, or if obviously you have questions for how I did stuff or need more explanation, put it in the description or in the comments, and I'll attempt to answer. Oh gosh, there's one more detail I forgot about the top. So there is a trim along the top of the collar, this angled thing. So I made that out of foam, like 2mm EVA foam. I just kind of looked at the proportions of how it was set up on the actual garment, and then I hand drew out like the points, the triangles, to get those going all the way around the top, and then used I think I used rubber cement to glue it on, and it worked well. It looks great. So now we can talk about the belt. The belt is filled with even more details, which is insane. So the belt is 3D Lizen's pattern. The pieces are all from Crotech. So all of these are resin printed and then super glued onto the belt using our favorite super glue. All of these gold grommets are put in with my grommet press, and then Haley, again using EVA foam and a wood burner, wearing proper PPE and doing it outside, created kind of like this textured situation for the binding that goes around the top and bottom of the belt. It's a really weird organic design, and so Haley kind of eyeballed it and did a really good job kind of replicating that look all the way around, and then painted it again all with the same paint. So that, there's chains on the side. Again, that was from Haley's jewelry hoard, and so she assembled those using jump rings. And then I did Velcro in the center. So this is like kind of a functioning buckle because the Velcro is here in the center. You can see it here exposed because my dress form is a little bigger than me. So I have Velcro under there so it actually opens and closes in the front. Then there's this random little belt down here. That's just a weird additional detail. And so kind of for the mini belt, I did a strip wrapped around. It's kind of just ends down here. I need to put like a snap on the back so to attach it to the leg. I forgot how much hand stitching I did on this. So it's a layer of pleather. I made 2 layers of piping. I kind of like making piping, but I made 2 layers of piping and then painted with the pleather, then painted them copper with the paint, sewed them onto the belt, and then because I hand stitched it in the back. Yes, so that, yeah, folded it in. Then there's a layer of the actual pants and shirt fabric on top of it because it was the same texture in the game images. On top of that, and I did a really good job sewing it because I can't remember how I did it because there's no top stitching, so I must have tucked it all underneath it. I was probably mostly unconscious at this point. And then there's, I'm lucky that we had some gray left over that we hadn't painted, so kind of the dark gray before we spray painted it on top of the belt. And then there is a design on top of that, again in the pleather. And so it's this weird design that I just looked at the reference images and hand drew out a pattern, cut out the shape, and then used the quilting tool to quilt around the edge. Haley then went in and hand beaded all of these beads onto the front of it, and then we used like some scissors or like a comb or something to kind of rough up the edges all along the edge, because again, that's what it looks like in the game file. I then glued on all of these skulls along the front, and then I think these are supposed to be tassels in the game, but I like in the game file they're flat because I guess it'd be really hard to like design tassels that are this small, like all of those strings and all of that. So they're just little rectangles with like some pleating at the top. And so I just thought I liked that look. I wanted to make it like that rather than making it a bunch of tassels. So I just did that. I used leftovers from the red, cut them out, used fray check around the edges so that they could still have raw edges but not disintegrate everywhere, and did a little pleat at the top and then glued them all down underneath the skulls. And that worked really well. The fray check is working really well, and they're just hanging out down there. I think that's all. Oh yeah, and then there's the chain up here. It actually attaches to this this resin print. It has a hook underneath the chin, and so it attaches there. And then there's this weird compass thing. When I was at Dragon Con, it kind of broke off this jump ring here. I don't, is it a compass? Is it a key chain? I don't know. It's just kind of there. So I need to repair that, but it's a detail and it's there. So we have to recreate it. And it's just hand stitched up underneath the inside of the belt. So I think that's all of the detail on the main cosplay. So turning over to the accessories, because there's even more. Talking about the gauntlet, so again, all of these files are from Crotech and they were all excellent. I think I scaled down most of the hand pieces to about 90% so that they would fit my hand. And so in order to attach it to my hand, I can't remember her name right now, but we'll put it right here. Her and her partner made an excellent Gortash, and they did a really good job with their gauntlet, and so they gave me some recommendations for how to make mine. And so I put this like Taylor Swift friendship bracelet stuff on here and tied it to some holes on the gauntlet so that I could kind of slide my fingers in there, and then it would rest on the back of my hand and look good. On the nether stone itself is printed in clear resin, and then some of the teeth have fallen out, but I need to go back and super glue the teeth back in because those are separate pieces. All of those scaled down to 90% so that they would all fit inside. The excellent cosplayer with the recommendation also recommended these amazing LED balls from Amazon. We can link these down below. They're just one tiny LED and they come in a bunch of different colors, but they are so bright. They are so bright on like pulling out this little piece of paper, and you can put the paper back in. But they recommended drilling a hole right through the top of kind of the roof of the mouth of the hand. And then you can take this LED and gently kind of shove it in there and then it will put a glow over the nether stone. So that it will glow and be purple. And these things last weeks. So long. I lost the paper and couldn't put it back in for one, and it lasted, like, it's still glowing. I think it's still glowing. These are excellent resources. I think they'd be great for any kind of cosplay purpose, so definitely check out the Amazon link that's in the description to get these in a bunch of different colors. We're gonna use these for Agatha. I just have like a bag. I think they come like a bag of 120 or something. Love these. And so that lasted all day. Then there was the rest of the gauntlet. For the ring pieces, I used some snips and cut a little crack in the back of all of these because I know that my fingers are going to expand throughout the day from heat and from wear, and I don't want to get these stuck. That would be really stressful. And so I just did a little crack on the back of each of these rings so that I could easily slide it over my fingers, no matter what my fingers look like during the day, what condition they were in, I could still get them on and off. They were actually really comfortable compared to the arm armor. The arm armor, I love saying arm armor. I think I'm going to be having an update video about how I'm going to be redoing all of these. They were one of the biggest challenges of this build, how to make these actually go onto my arms. In the game, it's not real. It's a video game. It doesn't exist. He can bend his elbow. He can do all kinds of stuff and have full mobility with this stuff that's like solid. And like, how the heck are you supposed to make that? It doesn't exist in the real world. And so these files are from Crowtech, again. And the way that I tried to figure them out is so breaking the file up into pieces. And then I made a bicep piece. And then I made a forearm piece. Getting them on. I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to 3D printing things like this. It's too long. First off, the sleeve should be like up here. It's just too freaking long. These things, it was falling. It was stabbing into my hand all day. It hurt so bad. I just had to hold my hand out like this to keep it from falling down even more. We tried to put foam on the inside of these pieces, which kind of helped, but it kept sliding down all day. It's too long. Like, for me to bend my elbow, it's just like, this just doesn't work. We got to figure out a different way of doing this. Haley did have the brilliant idea of putting some epoxy sculpt on the top of each of these to create a more organic seam so that it wouldn't look just like a hard cut from the 3D print files. So that was a really good idea. It's just, it needs to be like this long and then scooted up and smaller, and I don't know. It just doesn't work. So that is going to be an area of improvement when it comes to this cosplay. The files are great. Again, it's just all user error. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to like take things from the real world or from the digital file and put it into the real world, which is just a skill that I get to develop. Yay! The wig is from Amazon. From our friend Pumpkin is an excellent wig stylist, and so cut the wig for me. So this looks great. It's basically, she cut out some of the front, and then we did a little bit of styling on the front of the wig to kind of get it out of my face. But this is basically what it looks like out of the bag, and we'll link that on Amazon as well. The boots, I think, are the last piece to talk about. So the boots are another area of improvement. Again, I'm going to have update videos for how I'm going to be updating these. So these are my equestrian boots. These are tall black leather equestrian boots that I glued. Again, there's more details on it. So more details for the foot demons. These are glued on using E6000. Scaled them down to, I think, 93% each from the original files, and then just glued them onto the top of the belt. Those worked great. What did not work great were these. And so we were kind of in panic mode and getting very down to the deadline. And I did not have time to do additional embroidery to get these dragons cut out, which is what I've done now. So we cut these out on the brother cutter. It was very difficult because the brother cutter pad had lost all its sticky, and the fabric kept getting pulled up and tearing, and it was just really hard. And I don't think it looks very good. I used fray check around the edge and then glued it on using rubber cement, and it just didn't work. Like, these are just peeling off. Like, this is not this is not the way. So gonna be doing these again. I've got the embroidery figured out, so I'm gonna be re-gluing better embroidery onto the sides of the boots, and that's going to look much more attractive, I hope, and be more of a permanent solution. And I think the last thing to talk about is actually wearing it to DragonCon. And so our friend Flavored K did my makeup. They did an amazing job making me look tired and haggard and stippling 5 o'clock shadow over my beard. It looked really cool. I loved the way my makeup looked. Wearing it is actually really fun, other than the armor, which again, I've addressed that. It's going to be everything. This is actually really comfortable. In DragonCon in Atlanta heat, it was super hot, and so I was sweating buckets. But I think when I wear it to New York Comic Con, I'm hoping that it's going to be a little more comfortable because it's going to be a little cooler there up north. So yeah, I love this. This is all great. We did a really good job. It fits, it wears, it does everything that it's supposed to. The boots are going to get figured out. The gauntlet is fine. The gauntlet's actually really fun. I love all the rings and the little claws and everything. So that's all really fun. The wig is fine. The wig fits my head. The boots are great. It's just these little jerks. These little jerks are going to get figured out. But yes, that is pretty much the process. I think I hit everything. I know this was a super long video. Let us know if you prefer like the long form video versus like a part 1 and 2, breaking it up. I know sometimes people just like sitting and hearing stories, and so that's what I'm here to do. Very excited to continue wearing this, see it throughout its lifetime. It's going to hold up really well because I worked really hard in making it well. Not cutting any corners, even when we were tired, even when we were stressed out. It was just do all the details. That was the goal of this build. And so I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown. Again, any questions or comments, put them down there. Give us a like. We worked really hard on this. And we want to continue bringing cosplay breakdowns to this channel, how we're making stuff, telling stories. But you can find us on Instagram and at TikTok at The Wizard Tailor and Hobbit Party. We hope to see you there as well, and look forward to posting more videos soon. See you next time. Bye.
Okay, wait.